This is Joe Wonder and the Enigmatic Adventures, released on the 3rd of February 2023 for the PS5 and Steam. The footage you are seeing is from the PlayStation 5 version. The developer and publisher, Frozen Pixel, contacted me through Keymailer and offered a game key in exchange for video coverage. Usually, I am the one who requests a key based on what I'm interested in covering, so it was a curious change of pace being reached out to. Although I received a copy of the game for free, I shall remain impartial. What manner of amateur detective would I be if I wasn't? I can remember a time when the 3D collectathon platformer genre was considered dead. Somewhere in the beginning of the HD era of consoles, around the start of the brown and grey tinted dystopian shooters, video games had grown up, as had the people who played them. So every washed-up decision-maker in the industry assumed that gamers no longer wanted something colourful and childish at this time. The collectathon platformer as we knew it had been unceremoniously forgotten. The games we did get within this genre were shadows of their former selves, innovating in the wrong direction. Sonic the Hedgehog's broken physics, misguided development, and unfinished state left gamers soured, while Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts went out of its way to poke fun at the people who enjoyed the previous entries, while shoehorning in vehicle construction that was thematically ill-fitting. Had Joe Wonder released in this time frame, it would have perhaps stood out as one of few current examples in a bygone genre. Nothing uniquely special. Well, you might say the same about a cool glass of water, but that's really nice when it's a hot day and you're thirsty. In that drought of quality platformers, Joe Wonder would have gone down quite a treat. But we are not in a drought anymore. With the 3D collectathon platformer having been revived over the past decade through the efforts of A Hat in Time, Clive and Wrench, Demon Turf, and other indie darlings, it's Joe Wonder you haven't heard of Joe Wonder. Not because it's a bad game. It isn't a bad game. Just more of a by-the-numbers one. Initial impressions of the game's presentation are promising. The title screen features an Aztec-inspired ruined backdrop within a grassy and overgrown jungle, with the game's logo diegetically placed there with real-time lighting. Sure, the music sounds like a piece of stock music, but it sets the vibe. Pressing X takes us to the main menu, which features our smug-looking hero, his whip glitching through the floor. Combined with the music, the main character here gives off feelings less Joe Wonder and more Indiana Joe, with his hat, whip, and tie. The options menu is bare bones, containing merely language settings and general volume options. Surprised to not see any accessibility options here, as there has been quite a push recently amongst indies to include them. On the PS5 there aren't any graphics or performance modes to speak of, not even toggleable modes of any kind. Thankfully the game doesn't experience any slowdowns, so the lack of a performance mode is acceptable. Upon starting the game, we see our intrepid hero Joe stumbling across a suspicious red jewel that opens a magic portal. He is sucked into it and whisked away to some kind of magical jungle world. No explanation, no reasoning. This must be why they're the enigmatic adventures, as opposed to the well-explained adventures. My immediate impressions upon receiving control of Joe is that he feels a little sluggish. That changes once you unlock the ability to run, but that doesn't happen until you set foot into the first stage. I feel like his run should be the default speed. But as I said a moment ago, there is no toggle for like always run, or anything at all really. I was honestly quite impressed with the overall look and polish of the visuals here, right from the get-go. I found myself compelled to walk over the grass, appreciating the effect of it being trampled under Joe's feet. Little things like that go a long way toward making the environment feel somewhat real. Obviously a lot of love went into this game's environments. Going to the glowing gate took me to the game's first level, and this is where the game starts to show its true colours right off the bat. Describing itself as an homage to old-school gaming with new-age graphics and innovative puzzles, Joe Wonder is like Ronseal. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It's unapologetically inspired by classic platformers, most notably the Crash Bandicoot series with the ruin-themed stages and zoomed-out camera. You can tell it's been inspired by Crash Bandicoot specifically, as pressing the triangle button whilst in-game makes your collectibles drop down from the top of the screen. I tried this instinctively, by the way, and I was quite amazed it worked. But unlike Crash Bandicoot, Joe has a whip. Crash really could have used a whip. Joe can use it to stun enemies, admittedly not from as far away as I would have hoped. and he can also drag objects around with it. The beginning of the game puts some basic puzzles with pressure switches in front of you, but it isn't long before you need to move objects around in a specific order to complete unorthodox and rather taxing puzzles. Each stage has 5 optional collectibles. In the first world, these take the form of coins, for example. There's also a gem at the end of each stage. Collecting this gem will complete the stage and open the next one. After you beat all the stages, you'll get a boss encounter. These are more like mini platforming challenges, with each boss taking 6 hits to defeat. These are long, drawn out, and take twice as long as they need to. Once the boss is defeated and the world has been finished, there is a bonus hard level to complete, a platforming challenge with a little more meat on its bones. When you defeat a boss, the level just ends. Even in classic platformers, the boss might say something. The lack of cutscenes, nuance, storytelling really is a severe slight on the game's part, creating this wild world only to provide no context. I couldn't bring myself to finish the game. I fear it ends with a congratulations screen, followed by white text on a black background credits, and more stock-sounding music. Yeah, that's right, I gave up. Later puzzles get more elaborate, which would be fine if merely colliding with a single enemy didn't set you back such a way, forcing you to reset your puzzle progress. It got to the point where I started brute-forcing puzzles where I could. I was that desperate to move on. It hit me right then that the target audience for Joe Wonder, it ain't me. The puzzles, these innovative puzzles, such as rolling a ball, which we haven't seen countless times before. There are definitely some quality of life improvements that could have been made here, such as giving Joe a life bar so that a single obstacle or enemy that barely grazes his ass doesn't knock him flat immediately. A health bar that could be replenished every time you hit a checkpoint. Or how about taking the enemies out more or less altogether, seeing as they add nothing to the experience? Is there truly a valid reason for having them respawn? They don't in Crash Bandicoot. I suppose I'd say Joe Wonder's biggest flaw is simply that it's not too exciting. It doesn't have a flashy musical score, bright art style, or endearing protagonist. It's a dude in Indiana Jones's digs, not a fleshed out and original character. There are next to no cutscenes, no compelling reason to help Joe escape, leave, get away from wherever the heck he is, or whatever the heck he is supposed to be doing. This is a good looking game with some quality visuals that unfortunately lacks notable direction. That makes it a difficult game to stick with. Developer Frozen Pixel were working on a game over 10 years ago called Nucleotide, which allowed you to play as an aquatic creature in a pond, framed from above. It appeared to be cancelled in favour of a MOBA named Nanobiotic, which was approved through the antiquated Steam Greenlight process. When that game failed to become a finished product, it would appear the developer moved on to Joe Wonder. Now, it's unfair to compare apples to oranges, but I would have found Nucleotide much more compelling. You get a sense from the old developer diaries that the programmer, Ivan Mondek, was enjoying working on this title. Yes, Nucleotide appeared to have an identity, much more of its own, a look, a feel, an odd playstyle that seemed promising.
Today's lesson is getting to know the tongue and its use.
Nevertheless, one must learn to stick out his tongue not, and one is prepared to use it not.
Today, we are sure as hell prepared to do just that.
While there are some similarities in the art style of both Nucleotide and Joe Wonder, both games are drastically different in terms of gameplay and feel. It took the studio 10 years to eventually put out a finished title, their flagship title. You could say Frozen Pixel are a long player and a late bloomer, but like all things, working on project after project that gets cancelled for so long can ultimately lead to a less focused vision. That's why I have concerns over the nature of current-day AAA games, as video game development cycles are steadily approaching a decade for larger studios. I hope, of course, that Frozen Pixel's next game doesn't take a further 10 years to release, and I'm certain that whatever that may be, it will truly embellish and improve upon the framework laid out here. I would cautiously recommend Joe Wonder and the Enigmatic Adventures to gamers with an intense focus and a high level of patience. Fans of simple, challenging games that evoke the feel of 3D platformers from the mid to late 90s. players that don't mind having to repeat sections over and over as a result of the game being more archaic in design. The PC version is rated as Steam Deck compatible. Owners of that hardware can play the game on the go, which is a more welcoming prospect than sitting down to play the game on a big television. But it would be remiss of us not to mention the biggest sticking point: the game's price. Joe Wonder and the Enigmatic Adventures is, at the time of recording, priced at $26.99 GBP, $29.99 USD. The price tag does seem high for the game, though the game does contain unlockable difficulty modes upon completion that will certainly appeal to more hardcore gamers. Modes where levels don't feature checkpoints, or you have one single life throughout the whole game, which would add replay value. However, if you're not looking to play these modes, the price of Joe Wonder may be a difficult pill to swallow. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which features 3 full games in this unforgiving style of gameplay, is only $10 more expensive and often goes on sale for half price, or even lower. They are also rated Steam Deck compatible. A consumer is going to select Insane Trilogy over Joe Wonder, which will ultimately lead to the game getting overlooked, which is a shame, as there is genuinely a great deal to appreciate here. Looking at the price objectively, sales of Joe Wonder will allow Frozen Pixel to work on future titles that use the criticisms and concerns as a diving board for bigger and better games. But as it stands, $30 seems quite high. In conclusion, Joe Wonder's lack of individuality is both one of its strongest points and its biggest flaws. Frozen Pixel have shown themselves committed to fixing the game's bugs and oversights, having already addressed missing features in title updates since the game's release earlier this year. Whether or not it will ultimately become a game that I can recommend to everyone is hard to say, but fans of classic platformers will find enough to sink their teeth into here should the game go on sale. I'll see you on the next ACO Investigates.